Welcome, everyone, to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, it is mid-July. It is probably one of the more exciting times of the season. We've got promotions happening. We're coming out of the All-Star break. We're trying to figure out what's going on in the major leagues. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen at the trade deadline. We've got rankings coming in. We've got all kinds of emails about everything going on. Lots to talk about here. An action-packed episode, and what is going to be an action-packed week for us. What's top of mind for you as we come out of the first weekend after the All-Star break?
I think that the trade deadline, it's got to be the trade deadline, right? Like, we're past the draft. Yeah. The Red Sox offense is kind of on fire again. They're the best team in baseball since like mid-June. And I look at the team and I just see like they're two starting pitchers away from being a very interesting team in October. And I wonder what's going to happen between now and the deadline, because there's a lot that can change, obviously. But I look at the schedule, I look at the way they're playing, I look at, the top three in the rotation, or it's really two, and then Cutter Crawford had a really nice start today, but you don't know what you're going to get from him. But
he's a good five.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a team that is a couple starters short, and if they have those starters, it all starts to fit a lot better because it pushes guys to the bullpen. It puts guys in kind of the role, we'll talk about in a little bit. That revolving door at the 13th slot will disappear. It's fun watching the offense and the pitching staff. Ryan Baio is great. Paxton, rough start recently, but still fun to watch. And I don't know, it's an interesting position because I think that the Red Sox are definitely playing better than a lot of people expected them to be. And they're definitely in it with a chance if they can, make a couple key additions, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got plenty to talk about, but of course, if you want to support the show, first of all, thank you for downloading. That's the first way you can do it. Second of all, or streaming, doesn't really matter. Second of all, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, spread the word. Spreading word, podcast recommendations by word of mouth. Word of mouth is the best way to support any kind of production such as this one. And of course, you can rate and review us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, RIP Stitcher, etc., wherever it is that you listen, if they offer such a mechanism. And you can support us either on patreon.com/SoxProspects or by going to the site and supporting our annual fundraising drive at SoxProspects.com/donate. We are, I think, like 75% of the way towards our goal. So we are close to our fundraising goal for the year. So you can help us, again, either patreon.com/SoxProspects or SoxProspects.com/donate. Appreciate all of your support. And of course, send us your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. We're going to get to those today because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. And Ian, let's start. Well, here's the itinerary for the show. We're going to talk news. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on at the major league level, preview, maybe not the trade deadline, because just maybe kind of what the current situation is, because we're going to have episodes between now and the trade deadline. We're going to talk about the MLB draft after the whole draft finished, what the haul was. And honestly, we're going to not to get into it, but we are not going to get into it too much this episode, because our next episode is going to be with our good friend Jim Callis of MLB.com. He's going to be joining us this week to record an episode. We're recording Wednesday night. Probably won't go up till Thursday night, unless I'm really on the ball Wednesday night. But Jim's going to be joining us to talk draft. So it would be kind of repetitive for us to talk about it and then just do it again with him on Wednesday. Or Thursday when it comes out. So we're going to touch on it really quick, quick thoughts on it, but we're not going to do a whole session on that, a whole segment. We're going to talk about our recent update on the rankings, which we didn't get to last time. It's mid-month, and honestly, I think we're going to have I think there's some things we would already change about the rankings, but we're going to talk about what happened and why, and what maybe preview next month's changes, because in context with the draft, for example, because we may or may not talk about that piece of things too much with Jim. And then, of course, as always, we'll get to your emails. So, Ian, should we talk news? I guess first would be the place to start. And start in the farm, I guess. It's promotion time. Again, big group of promotions coming out of the All-Star break, as there usually is, especially now that with this kind of universal All-Star break at every level, because they got rid of the, AAA, AA, single A All-Star games, which those had different All-Star breaks. Just one All-Star break for everyone kind of trying to get people to focus on the draft and the All-Star weekend, which I get. It's kind of, interesting. I like it. The promotions are starting at the top of the system. Nico Cavadas moving up from Portland to Worcester, and going down one level, moving up from Greenville to Portland were Blaze Jordan and Wickelman Gonzalez. Of course, Cavadas is a first baseman, Jordan a corner infielder, Wickelman Gonzalez right-handed starter. And then 3 guys moving up from low A Salem to high A Greenville were right-handed starter Luis Perales, right-handed reliever Felix Cepeda, and outfielder Alan Castro. Some interesting names on that list, Ian. What kind of jumps out at you when you look at those 6 names as far as moving up? I mean, they're obviously on a bit of a spectrum in terms of prospectiness.
I think that the 2 most impactful ones are the ones to Double A with Wickelman Gonzalez and Blaze Jordan. Because with Gonzalez, he's obviously someone who is Rule 5 eligible this offseason. He was almost taken last offseason in the Rule 5 draft, and they kind of dodged the bullet there. And now he's still in the organization. He's pitching really well. He made his Double A debut, granted against a terrible Reading team, but still, 6 innings, 4 hits, 9 strikeouts, I think 1 walk. It's encouraging because obviously the biggest concern or issue with him in high A has been his inability to consistently throw strikes. But seeing him at the Double A level, I think, is a good litmus test. And at this point, he's going to have to be added to the 40-man roster, or he's going to get picked 1-1 in the
If the season
draft.
ended today, yes, no question. Yeah,
but I think that it will be a good test for him and give them a good idea of what they have with him, whether it's more, he's a starter, he's a reliever, and whether he's someone that maybe they start planning for being up at some point next season. On the flip side, with Blaze Jordan, obviously someone we get a lot of questions about. He had a really good season in high A. He went back there, dominated the level, what you want to see. And this is the big test. I mean, we've seen guys.
That's what we've been saying for over a year now.
Like, consistently have moved up and struggled. I look at Nico Cavadas, even Chase Mydroth now. I think he's hitting like 280, 400, like 370. There's just a massive gap between the pitching caliber you're going to see at high A and Double A. And for someone like him, who's really good at exploiting mistake pitches and hitting like below average velocity, this is the big test for him. This is, the first, obviously. Can he show that he can consistently hit Double A pitching? And obviously, it's been a pretty big inflection point for a lot of guys in the system recently. I look at like Matthew Lugo is the big one. And I think that comes to mind with this season, where he made the jump to high A or to Double A and just hasn't been able to adjust to the caliber of competition there. He's, moved out to left field, and underlying metrics are not very good. And he's someone who's just really struggled in his first go around. And now he's still young, that obviously could improve the second time around. And the same thing with Jordan. Jordan's really young. But this is a good test for him, and I think will give us a better idea of where he kind of stands in the prospect sphere of the Red Sox. Because right now, I think a lot of people were surprised he's not in our top 10 or even our top 15, and frankly, he might even be closer to 20 than he is 15 right now.
There are people who say that we hate Blaze Jordan. It's kind of funny. I guess that kind of means you've made it when people say that you're hating a particular person or team.
It's just, and I think that one thing with Jordan that people need to remember too is we're not playing fantasy baseball here.
Yeah,
his offensive numbers are not the only thing that go into the evaluation. Like, when we think about Blaze Jordan as a player, we have to take into consideration his base running, his defense, things like that. And those are just areas where he doesn't project to add a lot of value at currently. So he's got to hit, and he has to, not just hit, he has to mash in order to be a solid prospect. I mean, we've seen, guys, Bobby Dahlbeck's a great example. Dahlbeck's a better defender than Blaze Jordan is, and he's mashed in AAA this year, and he hasn't even he's not at the Red Sox. I think that's public, right? That the Red Sox have basically told him,
he said that Chaim Bloom was straight up with him, you are playing for the 29 other teams right now.
Yeah. And so it's the bar for, and Dahlbeck adds more defensive value than Jordan. And so it's a tough lane to be in if you don't absolutely mash. And we've seen him do it in the low minors, and now is that test against that better pitching, and we'll see what he can do from here.
Yep. I mean, look, if he comes out and he's hitting velocity and, hitting for good average, and the thing is, on that roster, he's not going to get a whole lot of time at third base, which I think is part of why it took them so long to promote him to Double A. Because on that on that Double A roster, you've got Meyer at short, York at second, and Mydroth by necessity at third, even though I'm sure you'd rather have Mydroth at second. But York is just the higher priority player right now. Jordan's not going to get a lot of time at third. That's exactly what happened when he was in Double A with Meyer, Brian Urbonasi.
You mean high A?
Or high A, sorry. high A with Bonacy, Edinson Paulino, and Marcelo Meyer. He just played first base mostly because that was the way to get his bat in the lineup. And he would play third sometimes if one of those other guys sat. But that's going to happen again. So I think when he was in, when he's in high A with just Bonacy and Paulino, he can play third a lot. And he was playing third a lot before he got promoted. So I think it was just trying to get him reps there. And that was the way to do it. So that's why it took them so long to make the promotion. Because he clearly at the plate was ready for a new challenge. It's just, like you said, it's not just, home runs and batting average and runs batted in.
I should make clear he's made some substantial improvements already this season.
Yes,
compared to what he did last year in Greenville, it was a lot better this season. But it's just still there's a couple of problem areas that we've highlighted over and over that still exist.
Aggressive.
And yeah, he's a little aggressive. He struggles with better pitching, and those are things that it's one thing to hit high A pitching. It's another different animal task to hit double A and then to ask them to come up and even beyond that. So he's just someone who's going to have to do it at every level. And this is the next chance for him to prove, that this is a guy that is, who's someone who has a chance to hit major league pitching.
Blaze Jordan pitches for plate appearance this year. The only players that are higher than him, Brooks Brannon in low A, Christian Koss in triple A, which is a small sample, John Frank Salazar in rookie ball, Yu Chang both on his rehab assignment in the majors, Frelly Encarnacion in like a 30 PA sample, and Jorge Alfaro in triple A. And that's it.
He just doesn't see a lot of pitches. He's an aggressive hitter. And
that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive. Like his in-zone contact rate is actually pretty good. He also chases a decent amount. So yeah. To me, the two that actually that I'll kind of hit on real quick are Perales moving up, which, like moving him up along with Wickelman just kind of made sense at this point in the season. He clearly was too good for that level.
Well, because the problem, and I think this is something just as an overarching point that I think is worth bringing up with low A.
And it's probably going to get to what I'm going to talk about with Castro
low A right now is terrible because all the good players have already been promoted and there's no draftees yet there. So Perales was basically just facing guys who weren't good enough to get promoted to high A and who were just kind of like chilling there. So yeah, it wasn't surprising to see him just absolutely shoving for the last couple of months because he's really
it's funny because I saw the guy strike 12 guys out in 5 innings and it was impressive and it was really cool to see live and he looked really good. I'm not downplaying that performance at all, but like it didn't strike me as like electric. I don't know. Like you just looked at the guys in that lineup and it's like, yeah, of course he's blowing these guys away. Like Monegro kind of did the same thing the next day, not to 12 strikeouts, but it was impressive. And I'm trying not to overly downplay it, but it just, you see some of these lineups. It's like, and it's part of the look, at this point in the season, low A is what short season A used to be. It's like low A gets worse as time goes on. And it goes from being what we used to think of as low A, but more of an expanded talent base to include some lower guys, to then it just, like you said, the cream kind of rises and you just kind of have to promote the cream with those guys. And I think that's a great transition into the Alan Castro thing. Cause that one, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you. It certainly caught me by surprise that they were promoting Castro in the sense that he was clearly one of the top prospects on that line in that lineup, but it's not like he was, even the underlying numbers were like good.
No, I think
he was hitting the exit velo was really good, but like there's holes in the game,
But
there's a little bit of
I think there's
split.
a lot of similarities to Anthony in the regards that his expected numbers are a lot better than what they were translating to on the field. And I think it stems from like just his pitch recognition and kind of the approach metrics are really good. Doesn't chase a lot, makes a lot of contact and
better against spin than Anthony's been.
Yeah. So it's like, I think that they kind of just the same thing that kind of prompted the Anthony promotion, and we've seen what he's done in high A is just demolish every pitch thrown to him.
Anthony,
Anthony. With Castro, it just reached a point that you're not going to learn if you're just taking pitches and just kind of just standing there and get yourself out because you feel like you should swing on a 3-1 pitch that probably isn't really a strike. Right. Like that's not doing anyone any good, and I think that it shows twofold that how highly they regard Castro. I think he's one of the better, obviously he's one of the more interesting guys at that level. And I think also though, it just shows is kind of just what we were talking about with how weak that level is, that it was kind of important to get him out of there, even though he's still obviously really young and up to Greenville for a better test.
Yeah, and when you look at who is currently on that in that Salem lineup, even the interesting players, Ian, it's like, with the exception of maybe Mikey Romero, it's guys that if Lowell were still a level, you would expect to see in Lowell. The Cutter Coffees, the Brooks Brannons, even
Well,
like Luis Ravello and Abram Liendo. Like, these are guys I would have expected to see in a Lowell lineup this year if Lowell were still a level.
well, it's also though that by the time you get to midseason, it's basically Lowell. Like
Well,
who's
no,
left in
that's what
there?
I'm saying is,
Yeah.
and that's what the lineup looks like now with Castro up.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
looks like that's if Lowell were a line, if it were the beginning of the year this year and there were a Lowell lineup, those are all
Yeah.
guys we would have had in Lowell.
Yeah.
Right. So, they'll be joined soon by Kyle Teal, I'm sure, which breaking down that catcher playing time between him, Lira, and Brandon's going to be interesting. I think they'll probably just deal with it. And Brandon will probably DH a lot, and I don't know. They'll work it out. But yeah. So it was an interesting group of promotions. Like to see it. I mean, Cavadas, just to touch on the other guys. I mean, Cavadas, I think that's just another like move him up. Like, he's a 3 true outcomes guy at this point. I don't think keeping him at Double A much longer was going to do much. And if you want to move Jordan up, I think it made sense to move Cavadas up to Triple A. Hit 8th in his first game up there. I think he's kind of going to be. I think it's weird because it's like they promoted Steven Scott and he's barely caught in Triple A. And I think it's with Scott and now probably with Cavadas, it's going to be a certain amount of like, this is the level you belong at. You're not necessarily a priority guy here right now. We always say once you get to AAA, who knows? But Cavadas isn't a threat to make it to the majors this year. He doesn't need to be added to the 40-man this offseason. So I think that he's going to, ease into AAA and then start there next year as more of a priority AAA type guy than he is now. But again, he's a 3 true outcomes guy. We'll see what he does at that level. I think it's going to be intriguing to see how much the 3 true outcomes stay where they are. Moving on, Ian, I guess let's move up to the majors. Lots happening. There's a few things there. One thing we didn't talk about before the show that I want to add to it is that there's some decisions coming on the lineup side of things, on the position player side of things, when they activate Pablo Reyes, which seems like it could be very soon. And then there's kind of the whole pitching situation is kind of unique for them. Excuse me, outside of the dumpster fire that was 2020, in which basically their entire rotation got hurt. But you've got a rotation right now that's 3 starters and 2 piggyback guys, although for whatever reason they're not acknowledging that that's what the situation. I mean, they're kind of acknowledging that, but like on our rosters page, I put Nick Pivetta and Chris Murphy into the rotation because they're basically the bulk reliever after an opener right now, so long as they don't pitch in relief on the 3 days in between.
Well, I think Pivetta is basically a starter. They just don't want to name him a starter because he's been so much better in the bullpen.
Well, that and because they're using an opener with him.
No, that's what I mean though, is
Yeah.
like he probably could transition back to starter, but I don't think they want to mess with what's really clicked with him because he's been excellent, obviously, since his move to the bullpen.
Yeah, but
Whereas I think
last
I look at Murphy as more of a true bullpen game than Pivetta, if that makes sense.
No,
like,
it's a bullpen game versus a piggyback starter game. I think that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah. Or an opener. Yeah, same thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Because if you look at Pivetta, I mean, his last 3 appearances, he's thrown 62, 67, and 76 pitches. Although Murphy's kind of trending that way too. His last 3 appearances were 46, 55, and 67 appearances. It's just that on his last outing, he only got through 3 on the 67 pitches.
I think the thing with Murphy though is I just worry about the diminishing returns if the longer he goes.
I don't think that he would go 5 innings.
He's not someone I would stretch out more than 3 innings personally. I mean, we saw he's been really good in this bullpen role, but I don't love stretching him out even further. I just worry that
because it's interesting that Brandon Walter, since coming back up from AAA on the 4th, is being used in kind of a true relief role.
But he's pitching multiple innings. I think he's just a bull reliever.
He's only pitched multiple innings two of his 4 appearances. His first 2 appearances, he went 1 inning.
Well, but wasn't there a rain delay or rain out or something in one of those first 2? So he would have gone longer, but then the rain came and he only had to throw 1.
That might be right. That might be the 6th.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
That might be the 6th. Because on the 6th, it was Crawford started and went 4, followed by Jakes for an inning, and then Walter for an inning. And then he was followed by Winkowski, who went 2.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
So that might have been what happened there. His 3rd outing was when he followed Paxton with 3 innings. And then his last outing, he went 2 to close the game yesterday on Saturday in the game. But it's interesting because it's like Paxton went 3, and then they went to Scott, Rodriguez, and Jakes before going to him. Which it's also interesting how left-handed this bullpen is right now because they've got four lefty relievers and Walter,
Well, that's
Bernardino,
why
Jakes,
I
and
think
Rodriguez.
Alex Cora had an interesting comment yesterday because he was asked why Winkowski wasn't used for multiple innings, and he was like,
Yeah,
"We don't have righties, so I can't."
yeah,
And I
because
was
their
like, "Okay,
right-handed
that's fair."
relievers
Yeah,
are Jansen and Martin, who you're saving for the end of the game.
and
Jake
Winkowski.
Faria, who
Well, and Winkowski. It's your three primary
right,
or your three late inning options are all righties right now.
yeah, yeah, and so you wind up with and then you've got a right. You have to have a right-hander in that 13th spot. That was Jake Faria until he was designated. Oh no, sorry, Taylor Scott until he was designated for assignment today. Jake Faria is clearly getting designated as for assignment tomorrow. He was called into the manager's office after the game, and it's fairly obvious that you just, with
Yeah, I
two
mean
bullpen games coming up, you need someone else in that spot after he went 65
that
pitches
spot is
today.
they're just buying time until Schreiber's back. That's going to be the
Schreiber
Schreiber
and or
spot.
Blyer too. I mean, Blyer's probably closer than Schreiber.
But no, because I think Blyer will go for a lefty. You're not going to carry 5 lefties on the roster.
I guess that's true. That's a fair point. So when Blyer comes
So-
back, it's probably like it might be Walter that goes back down.
It's either Walter or Jakes, but I would guess it's Jakes because they would need someone for multiple innings, so you'd keep Walter around for that. They don't
But the
have any
thing
other
is-
bullpen guys really there.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, my phone thought I was about to do a
And
workout.
honestly, for me,
Stop.
Blyer and Jakes are repetitive. Like that's the same profile. It's below average stuff, guys who you hope just get lefties out, and that's it.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't need both of them on the roster,
That's
in my
true.
opinion. Because
That's true. So you send Jakes down for Blyer and Schreiber.
Bernardino's clearly established himself as the primary lefty because he's been excellent this season. That's been a great pickup by Chaim Bloom and Co. Whichever scout recommended that, kudos, because yeah, he's been fantastic. So he's really turned into your primary left-handed relief option. But maybe Joely Rodriguez can pitch his way back into that mix, and then Walter's just the innings eater, and then Jakes is kind of like your mop-up guy for multiple or at the end of games. But he also, I mean, he's got a couple leverage appearances too, but.
Yeah,
he's a lefty specialist. He should never be facing righties, really.
Yeah, but you're right with that. The other reason that 13th spot is Schreiber's spot is that's just they're not going to put anyone in that spot who they do not want to designate for assignment, because they're going to designate that person for assignment to get Schreiber back on the roster when he's ready.
Yeah, so that's why. Yeah, it'll probably be Gudinho or
it's not. So
Shugart or something. I don't know.
So Gudinho pitched today, which is why I thought it was going to be Gudinho, but Gudinho pitched today in AAA after the MLB game ended.
It'll probably be Andres Nunez.
That's my guess. Yeah. That's my guess is it's him because they won't be afraid to DFA him. Someone mentioned Kyle Barraclaw.
I don't think it'll be him because I actually think he's decent.
Yeah.
I would give him starts, but I don't think they have a 40-man spot is the issue right now.
Right. So the thing is, Barraclaw threw 75 pitches on Friday night, so they're not going to call him up to pitch on Monday, or Tuesday for that matter. He's probably not available until Wednesday. So there's that piece of it, and even still, like you said, like it doesn't make sense to add him to. I don't think that Barraclaw is someone they want to call up and immediately DFA. If they need him for a spot start that lines up, fine. But like. I think
he's valuable depth right now because I genuinely think I would not be that upset if he made a spot starter or two for a couple turns to see what you had there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really the only guy I look at in that rotation that I think could fit that role right now.
For now,
for Lamet, who knows? Drohan's not ready. Van Bell is not ready, and Gudinho is not as good as Barraclaw in my opinion. So
yeah, and Rio Gomez either I don't think is an option. And then like you mentioned, there's names like Politi and Shugart that like. I don't know that they would call them up just to DFA them. Maybe they would. I don't know. I just think like Politi would get claimed on waivers. So I think it's like if the marginal value of Politi is not any better than a guy like Gudinho or Andres Nunez, they're not going to do that.
See, but on the flip side, I'm not sure they're not going to Rule 5 this offseason. And so
I guess that's true.
Picked he goes like who
the thing is letting someone claim him, they can option him. Whereas if someone picks him in Rule 5, they've got to keep him up.
Fair.
Oh, which reminds me of the other thing. Speaking of Rule 5, before we get to that though, so we'll see what happens with that 13th spot. I think that about covers it. The other thing, Ian, that we didn't really talk about beforehand is on the offensive side of the ball, Pablo Reyes is almost ready. It seems like he is basically ready, but they sent him with AA to Reading this weekend to stall. Like that's all I can.
He's working on the outfield. Come on.
Well, he played one game in center, and he played center, played DH, or DH'd, whatever it is. And today he played short for the first time on his rehab assignment. it seems to me it's pretty clear that they're stalling to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's
Because
an interesting scenario
you
situation.
look at the major league roster, there's two guys whose spots he could take, and I don't think it's not a. I don't know. Go ahead. It's
Well, no, because I mean, Yu Chang is a starting shortstop, so it's not going to be him. Like, let's get that out of the way right
Yep.
now. Yu Chang has been fantastic defensively, and you're not messing with that at all. And so the only people who it could be is Christian Arroyo or Kike Hernandez, and I think both. And that's if you're bringing back Reyes because they're all out of options.
mhm.
And I think for what the team needs, Reyes makes more sense than Kike Hernandez.
Yes.
And
Yep.
yeah,
100%.
that's I think that's the hard part is they don't. It's do you really are you ready to close the book on that? And I don't know.
It's funny because it's like
it's a tricky one.
Arroyo's when he's healthy, he can at least maybe like. It's weird because he's right-hander and he's getting carved by lefties this year. Like even Alex Cora like acknowledged that the other day in his presser, although Arroyo's hitting better lately. But the thing is, it's like you just cannot count on Arroyo to stay healthy at all. Like, and at this point, it's a skill that he just doesn't have is staying healthy. But that said, like what has Kike Hernandez given you in like? Granted, last year you want to throw it out because of the whole health issue, but it's just like when was the last time Kike Hernandez? Like, I guess he had that one stretch at the end of last year where he kind of got healthy, but
I mean, the thing is, Arroyo's not been that good either. Like
he's been better over the last few weeks.
Since May 1st, he's 267, 290, 465 slugging, but that's propped up by a 5-hit game. It basically all comes from that with 3 walks and 23 strikeouts. And if you're, I guess in July, he's been better. July, he's 400,
July, he's
423, 560, but everyone's been hitting. But then you go back to June and like he had a stretch to end the month where he was 125, 120, 167 in 7 games. Like he's just very streaky. And it's tough because I do think that Hernandez, if right, adds more than Arroyo does. But it's just something wrong. I don't know what
the last time he was right. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, he's struggling at the plate. He's struggling in the field.
I think they're trying to see what they can get for either of them as part of why they're delaying. Like, just, to me, it's like if one of them is going to get you more than the other one, then that's probably the one you move.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're both probably gone when Trevor Story comes back. Like,
yeah, and that's the other thing.
Because if Story comes back, I think you have to keep Yu Chang around for defense. And Pablo Reyes, similarly, makes more sense on the roster. Actually, maybe not.
Maybe not.
The question is because when Story comes back, he's going to play shortstop. Are you going to play Yu Chang every day at second base just for his defense? Probably not. So it's like, I don't know. Justin Turner's probably going to play second base. I think that's where it's going to, let's be honest, that's where this is going to end up with Justin Turner playing more second base because that gets your best bats in the lineup. That's what
I think that it sounds like they're only willing to do that because this is the other thing is basically they have a problem right now where their 7 best hitters play the same 5 positions. Are 4 outfielders and 3 corner infielders.
Yeah.
And you can use the DH spot, so that's 6 spots, and there's 7 of them.
But see, I know, I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I don't care if Rob Refsnyder doesn't ever play against righties.
I'm not talking about Refsnyder
and Duvall.
Well, okay, put it this way. Let me caveat this because I've thought this through a little further since tweeting that. I get why they're giving Duvall some run to try and figure things out. Because right now he's clearly, of those 7 guys, so the 7 guys is obviously Devers, Casas, Justin Turner, Yoshida, Duran, Verdugo, Duvall. Duvall, to me, is the one who's hitting the worst of them since Duvall came back. He just hasn't been right. I think they're giving Duvall run to see if he can figure it out.
Got 5-game hitting streak going. I mean, it's 1 hit at every game, but he's been a little.
Your team is better if Adam Duvall figures it out and turns into. I mean, maybe he doesn't have to be the Adam Duvall he was before he got hurt because that was an extremely small sample size in which he was carrying. He had 1 WAR in 2 weeks.
But I honestly think if he ends up just being a platoon bat off the bench, that's fine. I don't really think that's an issue. So that's
honestly, he might be a guy you move at the deadline anyway, just to break up the logjam.
But that's my point is I don't know if it's if you have Duvall and Refsnyder as just bench guys who play against lefties, so you have a lefty, so you can balance out the lineup against lefties or pinch hit. I don't really see that as a major issue.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
it's just the problem is that you've got if you want to get all 7 of those guys in a lineup against a right-hander, because again, against the lefty, Refsnyder's playing because that's his job is to go in and destroy lefties and
lead off. I mean,
Yeah, which he
he's one of
does.
the best hitters in baseball against lefties. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, great. But against righties, if you want to get all three of them in, the way you do that, as Cora did the other day and had acknowledged, is to put Turner at second, which it doesn't sound like they want to do often. I love when they talk about a 38-year-old like he's made of glass or something. He's
But
38. He's not 100.
I don't
But
blame them because I just think there's more wear and tear at second base. You
yes,
risk injuries on double plays. Like you have to be more athletic. And with Turner being so important in the lineup, I just don't. I wouldn't want to mess with him and potentially risk him getting hurt because him getting hurt would be a big problem for them.
yeah, no question, no
But
question.
that's
So
that it is something, and maybe we can transition to trade line with this. Is I don't know what they're going to do with second base because I don't
yeah,
think they have a starting second baseman on the roster right now. And Story coming back doesn't fix that because I don't think you're going to play Yu Chang at second every day for defense. Maybe you do, honestly.
maybe you do, because I
actually.
mean, if Chang could be a starting shortstop, why can't he be a starting second baseman in
And
the
maybe
post shift era?
maybe that is what they do is they just say
Yeah,
they just say that
or they just string it
basically.
together.
Well, but that's what I mean. It's like you have Yu Chang play 4 games, you have Turner play 1 or 2, and that's it. Like you just roll with that. But
Or you roll in Arroyo when it makes sense. Like you find
the point is
matchups
that
that work for guys.
Arroyo and
Yeah,
Hernandez might not be on the roster by
that's
then
true.
because to get
That's true.
Reyes and
Pablo Reyes.
Story
Yeah, who
back,
knows?
they both
Yeah,
are going to be gone unless they just DFA Reyes, which I don't think they want to do because
yeah,
he's been better than both of them. So
yeah. No, that's true.
yeah,
It's wild. I mean, to me, the obvious place you could pick up is the rotation because even if you're going to get, I mean, here's the thing: Garrett Whitlock and Chris Sale are on the IL. Chris Sale, it sounds like he is progressing. He's throwing. I don't know when they're planning on getting him back. I don't know how long after. He can come back like shortly after the trade deadline, as far as the 60 days. I just would hate to. I don't want them to sit there and say our deadline acquisitions are going to be Trevor Story, Chris Sale, and Garrett Whitlock.
I'm fine with doing it with Story. I would not do it with the pitchers because
Yes,
I look at the pitchers too, and it's just if you get Story or like you get Sale and Whitlock back, there's no guarantee both are going to be coming back as starters. Well, Sale
yeah.
will be, but Whitlock, like maybe you just have to push him to the pen because you look in the numbers and that's like there's things you can do with the pitchers if you acquire starters, whereas
Put it
it's a
this
little more
way:
difficult with the position players.
right now, you need 2 starters because you literally do not have to. Um, I'm okay with 1 rotation spot being left for some combination of Sale, Whitlock, Hauk, however the hell that shakes out when they all come back. I
Yeah.
don't want both spots being left to that.
No, I
You know
think
what
they
I mean?
have to get a starting pitcher. And that's
Yeah.
why, like, I personally, and I don't think they will do this, but I would try to get someone now who's just like serviceable. Like, go get Michael Lorenzen or someone who won't, not like the highest end or,
Yeah.
don't fish at the top end of the starting market.
I've seen
Just get,
Jack Flaherty floated. I don't
but that's
love
going to
that.
cost more, I think.
Yeah.
Like, just get someone who's like one of those like more middle guys, bring them in for 2 weeks to kind of get that 4th starter, see where you are in a couple weeks, and then you can either reflip them if you need to, or you go out and get that
Oh, so
other
you're saying
better
like do
starter.
it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't love going with 2 bullpen games, especially I think it's weird they're back to
Back to
back.
back. Yeah.
If you were gonna do this coming out of the deadline, you wouldn't do it back to back. That
You
just
made out of the All-Star break.
the All-Star break, sorry.
Yeah.
Like you had the chance to set your rotation
It's
and you
wild they did it this
chose to
way.
have them back to back, which makes me think maybe they are. I don't know. I don't like it's weird because we haven't really seen them in this situation.
Well, they all, like you said, I think it's
recently,
what you
so-
said, that they don't really think of Pavetta as a bullpen game. It's
No,
Pavetta with an opener.
Yeah. And if that's the case, I guess if you're basically saying Pavetta plus an opener is good for at least 6 innings, then I can
Which I think
understand it.
I'm cool with that.
But
I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
but I still would like to see them go get someone to bolster that rotation because even Crawford, like Crawford is going to be inconsistent. He's an injury risk. We've seen it before, and his stuff has kind of been weird. It's like up and down. And he obviously has had massive issues 2nd, 3rd time through the order too.
Yeah.
So I trust Bayo. I trust Paxton.
Well,
Beyond that, it's a lot of questions right now. And even Paxton, who knows? Like,
that's what I was about to say. It's easy to forget this, but like if I had said a month and a half ago, you're okay relying on James Paxton to hold down a spot in the rotation.
Well, because it's
right?
also with Paxton, and this is something that obviously I don't think it's being brought up because he's old. And so people don't care as much. But he's thrown more innings this year than like the last 3 seasons combined already.
Yeah. Well, that's because
Like,
he hasn't thrown at all.
He didn't throw any in 2022. He threw 1 inning in 2021, and he threw 20 in 2020. Are we sure he has like another 75 innings in him this year?
Yeah.
Like, who
Yeah.
knows? Like, he's already at 60, which
So
is
maybe, I mean,
3x.
maybe part of the argument for getting at least one, if not two starters, is maybe you can not skip Paxton starts, but like,
Like,
take
'cause
extra days and
the
stuff
thing is,
like
if
that.
you're going out and buying, you think you're going to be playing in October, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
you need a healthy James Paxton to reach your ceiling and be successful potentially in October.
Mhm.
And I'm just concerned that if you're counting on him to give you a start every 5 days for the rest of the season, how much is he going to have left in the tank by then?
I mean, what is your playoff rotation right now? In a perfect world, it's Sale, Bayo, acquisition, Paxton. Like you're
Or
requiring a playoff starter.
Paxton acquisition. But yeah.
I mean, it depends who it is, right? Like I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, okay, Brian Bayo's your number 2 right now. Like he's
I'm
been
fine with
pitching
that,
really
honestly.
well. It's just it's an interesting point that we find ourselves at is all I'm saying. And then like maybe it just gets to a point where you string it together too with the Hauk Whitlock. I don't know. Like let's see what these guys come back like. But
Yeah. It's an interesting discussion, and I think it's a lot like the next stretch is going to be very telling because they have these 3 games versus Oakland where realistically you need to sweep them. Oakland's terrible. You should sweep that series. And after that, you have the Mets who are bad but shouldn't be bad.
yeah, their record says you shouldn't be scared of them, but their payroll says you should.
Right. And so if they get through that, let's just say hypothetically they go 4-2 in that stretch.
Mm-hmm.
You're a week from the trade deadline.
Yeah. It's
except
not
but then
time,
the next
guys.
week is just a gauntlet. It's Braves, Giants, Mariners, Blue Jays is your next stretch. So it's a very weird position to be in because they could, run off, 5-1, 4-2 in these next 2 series. And then your next 9 games are against all very, very good teams. Or sorry, your next 12 or 13 games. I don't know if there's a 4-game series in there. Doesn't look like it. Or there's actually 2-game series. So your next 11 games are against teams who are in playoff contention or, really, really good. And so, you could easily have like a 4-8 stretch in there and then the narrative completely changes. And so it's just.
Well, that's the thing. I think what happens, honestly, the Oakland series, if they lose literally losing the Oakland series might completely on its own change what they do at the deadline.
But I don't think it will because they're at they're 60-53 right now. If they lose the Oakland series, they're 61-55. They're still 6 games over 500. You can't sell in Boston when you're 6 games over 500.
I mean, look at the standings is I guess my response to that, because yes, like in the East, they are no longer right now. The tiebreaker says they are not in last place. Whoop, whoop. I don't freak out when they are in last place. I'm not going to freak out when they are not. But that said, if you look at the wild card standings,
they're a game and a half back.
They're a game and a half back, but they're tied with the Yankees being a game and a half back. Let's say they were to fall behind the Yankees and like Seattle.
But that's not possible in the next 3 games, though.
They could be tied with Seattle. They're 3 games up.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, if at a point in the very near future they're behind 2 teams to catch Houston. I don't know. I mean, Baltimore is surging, Toronto is surging, the Angels are falling apart, which I hate seeing as a fan of baseball.
Well, it's gonna make the trade deadline even more interesting if they put Ohtani out there.
We've got to wait till the emails. But yeah, it's going to this week is going to be crucial, I think is the long and short of it.
I mean, Tampa, the interesting one is I wouldn't rule out Baltimore catching Tampa. Tampa has been terrible lately, and Baltimore has obviously been instead of trading for reinforcements, they're just calling guys up who are all
they're bringing up
prospects.
The reinforcement. They're only a game back, man.
That's what I said. I would not be surprised at all if Baltimore passed Tampa.
That's what I'm saying.
But let's be honest, the Red Sox are playing. There's 2 wild card spots available. They're playing for the Toronto and Houston spots because Baltimore and Tampa, are, barring something unforeseen, are both going to be in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
and none of the Central teams are going to make that. Are going to get
there's no chance of Central teams a wild card. So it's basically the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Astros, the Blue Jays, the Mariners, and the Angels are playing for 2 spots. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could, in theory, throw Cleveland with a very, very, very outside shot if they were to get hot with the kids or something, but I don't see it. A couple of smaller notes, of course. So happy trails to Darren Fenster, who after I believe it was 13 years in player development with the organization as a manager and coach, left to become an assistant coach at Miami, the University of Miami, not the Marlins. So happy trails to him. Um, guy who'd been around for a while, one of the first managers, actually, Ian, that I interviewed in the system, which I opened the interview screwing up the number of years he had been a manager in the system. Because the night before in the hotel room, I think that would have been Salem. Or no, would it have been Greenville? I think it was Greenville when Greenville was low A. I had looked and like in my head knew the right number, but misread his baseball reference page and went in. And the first question I screwed it up, and he quickly corrected me, and I recovered. But it's just a funny memory. Happy trails to him. And then the Futures game happened. Luis Guerrero faced a batter and got an out. Nick York got a hit. Nick York got a hit and went 1 for 3, you said, and Marcelo Meyer went 1 for 1.
York was 1 for 2, 1 for 3. I can't remember, but yeah,
Okay.
Meyer had a hit also. I think York was 1 for 3.
Yep. And then the Sea Dogs faced Noah Song when he was with Reading this week. Yay, fun. I don't really have much else to say about that. Interesting.
I think the one
they need to
thing
call him up by early August.
Well, I think the most likely outcome, because the Phillies are right in it. They are half a game back of the wild card. I don't know if you can add him to the roster if you're the Phillies. I think what will happen though is if he just does, someone's going to claim him. I don't think he gets back.
I think
to
that's
the Red Sox.
I think that's the most likely scenario to me. Because the Phillies need to call up Song. I tweeted this. Let me see if I can find a song. The earliest. Anyway, all right. He has to be up for most of August. Like you said, I think if they're in a playoff push, it's going to be really hard for them to add him. They might try to do it. I doubt he makes it through the end of the season unless they fall out of contention. And like you said, you look at teams like the A's, the Royals, the Rockies. One of these teams that's not in contention is just they can easily open a spot for him at this point. Get 60 days for him this year, 30 days next year, option him. So
yeah, and that's the tough thing is that just by him getting that injury and Philadelphia delaying it so long, it's basically meant that a team, it doesn't matter as much to the teams that know they're out of it now. That those roster spots aren't as valuable.
It's like a mid-year Rule 5 pick at this point.
Yeah.
Yep. So I would be stunned if he made it back to the system at this point. I think that's part of why, like, people are like, oh, the Red Sox should, enter a grievance or something. It's like, well, what's going to happen? The commissioner makes the Phillies put him on waivers, and he's going to get claimed. So, yeah,
nothing's going to happen because the commissioner's not going to rule. Like,
they're not going to do anything.
They didn't do anything wrong technically. Like,
yep.
they took advantage of a loophole in the rules with the restricted list for a stretch, and then he got hurt, and it is what it is. Like, I'm not surprised he got hurt, given they were ramping him up way faster than they probably should have been. But it's what happens.
Yeah.
Like,
yep. Okay. MLB draft, Ian. The draft finished on this past Tuesday. The Red Sox made 20 selections of amateur players, of which probably somewhere
they
between
made how many?
More than 20. There are 20 rounds. They made 22
two of the guys
picks.
Get eliminated?
They made 22 picks. I'm an idiot. They made 22 selections in the draft, including their 2 compensation picks. Thank you, Ian. Probably going to sign about 19-ish of them would be my guess. It's an interesting crop, Ian. We already broke down the Kyle Teal and Nazan Zanatello picks in our last episode. To me, it's another year with a kind of very clear top 3 picks, much like last year. In Antonio Anderson joining Teal and Zanatello. Anderson was their 3rd round pick, a high school shortstop out of Georgia, committed to Georgia Tech, consensus top 100 draft prospect. Named by a decent amount of people actually as one of the top guys available entering day 3. Pretty popular pick. You can see the full list of guys drafted on our website at the draft history link at soxprospects.com. To me, Ian, it is now very clear this front office is allergic to high school pitching. That's a jokingly.
I don't blame them. High school pitching
It's a
if all,
jokingly exaggerated way to put it, but
all the studies show that high school pitching, especially in the first or second round, is just the worst investment you can make. Like those
mhm,
guys, the hit rate on them is just so low. There's so much can go wrong.
mhm.
And I don't think they're wrong to just basically have eliminated that player type of player
I
early in
don't
the
know that they've
draft.
eliminated it. I just think with the way they it's more likely that the way that they evaluate, they disfavor that archetype of player so much that that player never makes it to the top of their list for
Yeah,
guys
because I
to
mean,
pick.
you look at you just only have to go back. I mean, the last time the Red Sox took a high school pitcher in the first round was what 2016 with
Would be
Jay
Groom.
Groom, and
Yeah.
how's that turned out? He had
Or
Tommy
even not even
John.
the first round. I mean, when's the last time they took? I mean, he's probably the last time they took one in the first like 3 rounds.
I mean, they took for the first time since I think 2019 a U.S. high schooler was this year. They hadn't drafted a U.S. high school pitcher since 2019
High
before they
school,
took.
U.S. high school pitcher. Yeah,
Yeah, because they took Elmer. Elmer's the one
Elmer
that,
Rodriguez Cruz
but
and
he was Puerto Rican, and he's from Puerto Rico, which obviously is technically part of the United States, but and a continental
Continental.
U.S. high schooler since 2019. So they did take one in the 20th round finally with the kid from, what was he, North
Robert
Dakota
Orlowski from
or
Idaho.
Idaho.
Yep.
But yeah,
Committed to UT San Antonio as one is from Idaho.
the
That
Roadrunners.
Idaho UTSA scouting pipeline, man.
I'm sure there is,
Yeah.
but I the draft, it played out exactly how we expected. Let's be honest. They took a bunch of up the middle guys. They took a bunch of good athletes. They took a bunch of pitchers with interesting characteristics, and that
Especially
was the draft.
fastball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't draft a single corner infielder. Well, like right now, corner infielder. They have some
Yeah.
guys who might projected it. They didn't take any, bat first corner outfield types. The guys they took can hit, make a ton of contact for the most part for the college game or the high schoolers. There's definitely some upside with those guys with Zanatello and Anderson. But yeah, I think that, if you told me, if I didn't know that Devin Pearson was running this draft, you could easily think, yeah, this is a Paul Taboni draft too, because there were a lot of the same principles, I think, at play.
And Taboni's still there. And I mean, talking to Pearson, especially after night one, I mean, he talked about like the prep that he was doing with Taboni, as far as lining up their board and running through different scenarios. And, it sounds like, and we mentioned this in the last episode, it was reported that they wanted Matt Shaw at 14. They didn't get him, but they knew exactly where they were going to go. And they got a guy in Teal who like they have a long history with, right? I mean, when we talked about that on the last episode. But that's what happens with all these guys. It's you do the scouting to put yourself in the position on the night of, and this is something Paul Taboni has talked with us about. He calls it building process with a guy is you want to have a lot of touches, like a lot of looks, a lot of discussions. You want to have as many data points as possible with a player. And they had that with Teal, and you're willing to take more risk later in the draft, right? Like, okay, it's a 15th round pick. Like, who knows? Like, I'm not saying Phoenix Call is a guy that they don't have a lot of history with. I'm sure they do, but like, you take that risk in the 15th round. Sure, get to know the kid. Maybe he signs for less than you think he will, or you need him as a backup if someone up front doesn't sign, and you've got all kinds of money sitting there to use. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a process that we've seen. This is a very Taboni Pearson era draft. It's college kids, and it's kind of funny. Like a lot of people saying, like, oh, they're not. There are 4 players who've been reported as signed so far. There's 6th through 9th round picks, 3 college right-handers, and a college outfielder who signed for combined $350,000. Basically, if you compare them to the slot values, it doesn't look like as much as they have saved, because with the slot values, you kind of have to add the 5% to those to figure out what they're saving. So right now they're about 600K under the cap for the players they've signed that they can spread elsewhere. Not sure how much Zanatello is going to require. He's at 1.7 ish million for his slot. He's probably going to need at least 2, one would think, if not more. Antonio Anderson at the 3rd round is going to be really interesting. Ian, he strikes me as someone who's going to need a lot more than 850,000 based on the pedigree. He's committed to Georgia Tech. We'll see where that goes. It's really interesting. Their 4th round pick, right-hander Matt Duffy out of Canisius. He's a college junior, but he's committed to transfer to South Carolina next year. That said, they really like him. It was reported by, I believe, Chad Jennings that he has a slightly underslot deal, but in his media availability after the draft ended, Devin Pearson pointed out, like, I saw that it was reported that he's underslot, but we really, really like him. And so it might be a situation where he is under slot. I mean, look, if you're Matt Duffy and the Red Sox offer you 500, it's
Yeah,
kind of hard to
I
say no to
I
that.
feel like that's what he's going to get, like
Yeah.
450, 500K.
I mean, how do you turn that down? Like, yeah, you're going to South Carolina next year, but like, what are the chances you move up to the third or second round?
Well, I mean, he'd be a senior too, so
And he'd be a
unlikely.
senior with no leverage. Yeah, exactly. Although I don't know what his situation is as far as having a COVID year, but again, at some point you're also just getting older.
Well, but at the end of the day, the top 10 rounds are going to sign. Like,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
already played 3 seasons at Canassus.
Famous
So.
last words with the Judd Fabian situation in the past,
Yeah,
but
but that was a different story
yeah,
because
that's a guy who fell.
yeah.
Who a
Well,
lot
no,
more
that's a
than
guy who was trying to get to a certain spot, and the Red Sox
right,
just said, "Fine, we'll take you anyway. We don't care."
right. And I don't see that being. I mean, Zanatello's basically telling people he's signing.
Well,
And
I think
Anderson, I
him
can't
and
imagine.
Anderson are already in Boston, so
Yeah, Zanatello is definitely. Yeah, they invited them both up to Boston for their physicals, so
yeah.
that'll get done. Everyone else here will get done. Reamer's Justin Reamer at 133. It's kind of interesting. They went college shortstops at 132 and 133, the two comp picks, and Christian Campbell and Justin Reamer. Reamer's interesting as a guy who was hurt all year, and it wouldn't strike me if we were to talk to them about him, if, on the side to hear like. And again, this isn't me like roundabout way saying something that we have talked to them about. We haven't, but like I bet he's a guy who they think if he were healthy all year would have gone a little higher.
I mean, Kylie
Um,
McDaniel said that on the draft
mhm.
that, or not on the draft, on something. He said it somewhere.
Twitter or chat or something.
Yeah, that Reamer was or might have been in his top 300 or whatever. Was Reamer was someone that was having a really good start to the season, and then he obviously tore his ACL. But a lot of people think that he would have been drafted higher if it wasn't for that injury.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And who
So
knows? Maybe they think maybe as a result they think he'll get him for a below slot bonus too. Like even though he's a junior. So, yeah, it's an interesting class. As far as the tough signs later, I mean, we'll talk to Jim about it. It's kind of funny internally. Like I think we all kind of think Nelly Taylor, the 11th rounder. He's at a JUCO in Florida, Polk State, which is near like Clearwater area. He's committed to FSU. It seems like we were all in kind of agreement that he probably signs if they took him in the 11th. Phoenix Call in the 15th round is an interesting kid who announced as a shortstop / outfielder out of Calabasas, California high school,
but he's
committed to
announced as an
UCLA.
outfielder.
He was announced as an outfielder. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
he plays shortstop in high school though. Also,
Yeah,
like everyone
Pearson
does,
said
but
he's one of the best high school defenders he's ever seen. They really like him, but hearing, and maybe this is just downplaying expectations. Hearing Pearson talk about him, it doesn't seem like he's a guy that they're necessarily expecting to sign. Mike's really confident that they're going to sign him, and Mike is really good at projecting this stuff. Mike being Mike Andrews, the editor in chief of the site and founder. So I'm inclined to listen to his kind of projections and give them a lot of weight. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see if they get that done. The other tough signs would be Robert Orlowski, the guy we talked about in the 20th round. I'd be very surprised if they got him. Dylan Schlegel in the 17th round is a high schooler out of Texas who's committed to Dallas Baptist. Those guys who are like high schoolers who aren't necessarily ranked and have kind of a college commitment that's not necessarily to a baseball powerhouse are always kind of interesting. So we'll see where that goes.
well, but Dallas Baptist is really good. That is
They
like
are
a baseball.
they are for
Yeah,
baseball. Okay.
yeah,
All
that
right.
they're one of the best baseball teams in Texas.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Shows you what I know. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. Maybe I'm thinking of like SMU or something. Yeah, I think I was thinking of SMU. So we'll see where that goes. Some other highlights.
Yeah, they were
UConn left hand.
47. Dallas Baptist was 47-16 this season,
Okay. All right. Well, that's good.
and they had a bunch of guys drafted.
That's right. Okay. Well, all right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Shout out to 18th rounder Zach Fogel out of UConn, grad transfer from Brown University. Whoop whoop.
Well, I think at the end of the day, like signing wise, it's all going to come down to what Teal, Zanatello, and Anderson get.
That's exactly
Like,
it.
Teal is under slot somehow, some number. I don't know what it is. We don't know what it hasn't been announced yet.
It's been reported that he's under slot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the difference between like getting call or not getting call could be like, is he 400K or is he 4 million or is he 4.5 million? Because that's a big difference there. And then similarly with Zanatello, I am convinced he's going to get more than the Nationals pick because I think he stated or someone reported
he said that he was telling people it came down between the Nationals at 40 and the Red Sox at 50.
And the Nationals at 40, it was like 2.3 million or something for their slot. So, or 2.1 million. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I think he's going to get north of that. So is he going to be, but is he going to be 2.3 or is he going to be closer to Roman Anthony, who is 2.9? Like that's,
Mhm.
and then Anderson, I have no idea what he's going to get. You could tell me he got 1.5. You could tell me he got a million. You could tell me he got 1.5. You could tell me he got 2 million. I believe you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think once we know those three, as soon as we know those three bonuses, we're going to have a very good idea of what they have left for call and
Yeah.
if they can get that done or not.
Well, that's why there was a lot of hand wringing about like how much the 6th through ninth round picks signed for, given that they weren't like just 10K. And it's like, okay, so they didn't save an extra 100 grand on Blake Wehunt out of Kennesaw State. Like, okay, like you could easily save 3 on Teal, like, or the swing on those guys, like you said, the swing
No,
on
but
Anderson is
but I
literally a
think
million.
I think what people are saying though is that between Wehunt, O'Donnell, and Weens, if you just gave 10K to all those guys, that's another 300K. If you're telling at the end is 300K plus whatever you have left enough for call, maybe more.
Maybe.
If does that give you a better chance than
Yeah,
just what
I
you
hear you.
have? But if you like those guys more than just senior signs, then is that better than spending that all on a high school lottery ticket? I would say
Yeah.
probably yes.
And
So
keep in mind when they're making these picks, it's not like they draft Connolly early at 151, and then they sit there twiddling their thumbs until they come up again for Weens at 178. Like that's not how it works. The way it works is in the meantime they are on the phones with guys. Will you sign for X? If so, we'll think about taking you at 178. Like they are figuring out what these guys are going to sign for. This isn't like they pick them and say, okay, like what's it going to take to sign you? A guy comes up and they're asking what the number is. They're asking, would you sign for this? So they know, and they they like Caden Rose to a degree that like, okay, in the 7th round, we're okay with signing Caden Rose, who's the outfielder out of Alabama, for 150K. Like they like him. Okay, cool. Like, and that's a selection they make. There's like, okay, we're also going to save 100K against his slot number plus the 5%. So that goes into our stash that we have for other guys. So, we'll have to wait to see what the math works out to once all these guys sign to really be able to judge it. Because there's going to be at least one bonus usually that really surprises us. Like I can remember when Nathan Hickey got a million and we were all like, what? Like, how did Nathan Hickey get a million? And now, he can hit. We see why they gave him a million. Can he catch? I don't know. But again, we'll see. So that's the draft. We'll get more this week with Jim Callis. Ian, let's move on to rankings. We updated our rankings on, I think it was July the 6th. They went up, Ian. It was shortly after the holiday, I believe. And we had a decent amount of movement, plenty to discuss. I guess starting at the top, obviously Marcelo Meyer is still our number one prospect. No controversy there. I guess the first thing we should probably talk about, Ian, is Roman Anthony moving up to 4, continuing his march up the rankings that I think we both agree is going to continue in August. But for now, lands at 4, passing both Shane Drohan and Nick York, up from 6 last month. And where to put him was a topic of discussion among us, Ian, and it's going to be one again next month, I think, or actually it might not be because I think we're probably all going to be in agreement. But that said, when a guy is moving up the rankings like this, it's always kind of an interesting thought exercise where we get to do this every month of reassess, which I think to me, especially, I don't want to look if we think a guy belongs at a spot, we put him there, right? So, for example, I mean, Yordani Monegro went from being not ranked to 32 this month, right? And that was like, okay, the stuff has gone up. The FCL is something of a black hole for us on information to some degree, especially at the start of the year when we don't know what's going on there. I got a chance to see him in Salem. We got some other scouting looks on him, reporting, etc. 32 made sense for him. But like when we've got guys in that top ranking, I think, and you've talked about this in the past, is not wanting to yo-yo a guy. We don't want to push a guy too high and then be like, oh, we pushed him too high. Like we shouldn't have had him that high to begin with. We were a little aggressive. I'd rather be a little, slow and like, okay, nope, you know what? He should be here. Lands at 4 right now. I think we both agree that Anthony is continuing to work his way up. We've mentioned that, the one kind of bugaboo was not bugaboo, but like the ground ball rate was high and low A. It's not anymore. Or sorry, it was high and low A. It's no longer high and high A. The batted ball profile looks exactly normal, and the results have matched. He is mashing. I think it's pretty clear he's going to be a consensus top 50 prospect at the end of the season if this all keeps going the way it is going, and he doesn't crater or something like that. I guess maybe to walk me through your thought process on the Anthony ranking for this month.
Well, I kind of I don't know if you do it the same way, but I kind of tier people is how I first organize my list. So I'll take the top 60 and be like, for me, Marcelo Meyer is a tier. And then the next tier for me is was Blaze, Rafaela, Anthony, and York was on the verge of like York was someone I had went back and forth putting in that tier.
Mhm.
And then so then it's, once I have that tier down, kind of just how do I want to order them within that tier? And yeah, Anthony ended up at 4 for now. Afterwards I got some feedback and thought about more and probably wish I put him at 2, but it's
Same.
fine. I mean, as I said, it's within the same tier. So I think when I look at Anthony, Blaze, Rafaela, they're all guys to me who are in the 50 to 125 range of prospects.
Mhm.
And maybe Anthony is, and I think what Anthony's shown and just talking to some scouts and analysts about him is that he's kind of reached that next level since he's got up to Greenville.
Yeah.
And as you said, the ground ball rate has really decreased. That was one of the biggest bugaboos. He still can't hit lefties at all. He's 125, 326, 156. So I like the walk rate. It shows he's seeing the ball, but the results aren't there. He's 4 for 32 and 43 plate appearances. So that's something that has been identified to me as kind of one of the biggest concerns with him is his ability to hit left-handed pitching. The other thing I'm monitoring with him is he's crushing the ball at Fluor Field and not hitting really much on the road. He's got a over 1,000 OPS at home and a 740 OPS on the road. Some of that I think is bad ball luck, but also I do wonder if his ability to go the other way he's kind of abusing the wall on Fluor Field just by, and because I've noticed a lot of his home runs have been the opposite way. So I do still think there are things to work on, but just as one analyst said to me, his batted ball data is like if you looked at the entire minor leagues, it's right near the top of it, and that's any level, and that's just special stuff. So yeah, in hindsight, I think that as you said, if we didn't do this every month, he probably would have jumped up a little higher already. But I think he's clearly separated himself from the rest of the guys I mentioned in that tier, and is now clearly the number 2 prospect in the system, or will be by the end of the month. And then,
Well,
from
just
there,
stopping
it's
on
just
Anthony real quick. It's one thing that I mean, I got asked about this on Twitter. With some mid-year top 100 lists coming out, I don't think Anthony is a top 10 prospect in the game right now. I think putting him as that is a little aggressive.
yeah, I
Like you
agree.
said,
I mean,
there's
like
plenty
as I said,
there.
he
Yeah,
can't hit lefties at all yet. He's shown no ability to hit lefties in the minors,
spin
really.
too.
And
He's struggling
and
against spin.
right, but I think the left-handed thing is more of a concern to me because
Yes.
that's he's a lefty, like left-handed hitters. That's always something you're worried about.
Mhm.
And if you look in his entire 2023, I think I'm trying to bring it up here.
It's sub
He
500.
is,
Sub
yeah.
500 OPS.
Is it? Yeah, against lefties for the season. Oh
It
no,
was
this is for
it's
the season.
500 in unless he's been hitting them better in Greenville.
No,
But
he hasn't. It is 5. It's sub 500 for the season. You're right.
OPS, yeah.
That wasn't just Greenville. That was both.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's got a 125. He's only faced somehow, by the way. He only has 43 plate appearances against lefties this year. That's crazy to me this far into the season.
Weird. It's weird.
But
It's
yeah,
one thing that I've noticed because I was trying to track that for a while in my lineup tracking, and I just gave up because I got a bunch of weeks behind, and it's just you have to click through to figure out what hand a guy is, like 3 things. And it surprised me how many more like left-handed starters the major league team is facing than all the minor league teams were facing. Which is,
yeah.
I guess that's just
But
the
no,
major
it's
leagues
just
versus the
I don't.
minors. But
I think that's an aggressive move. I think it's kind of maybe an overreaction to what Meyer's done in Portland, or not really done, even though his BABIP was like 190.
Mhm.
But
I think it's
that,
also reading too far into the like. Yes, we have these things like exit velo and zone contact and chase rates. I think you can put too much into those sort of things.
oh yeah, definitely. There needs context is important, and
Yes.
obviously it has to translate it on field eventually.
Mhm.
And yeah, no, I think Anthony's a really exciting prospect. And as you said, I think Baseball America had him 35 in their latest top 100, which is around where I would have had him if I was doing a
Mhm.
top 100 list. And I think in the 30 to 50 range. And yeah, if he can start showing some consistency against lefties and against, adjustments against breaking balls, he'll be a top 25 prospect by the end of the season. But I think to push him higher than that already is a little aggressive in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the hard hit rate over 50% in Greenville is something, but again, it's a small sample at this point. So, The other thing we talked a lot about, and one that's probably going to change next month, is Luis Perales versus Shane Drohan, um, as the top ranked pitcher in the system right now. This month we landed with Drohan at 6 and Perales at 7. I think doing it again now, I would flip them. I believe you would as well. Part of that is just more looks at Drohan. It's not what it was at the beginning of the year. Is
No,
kind of what you're saying.
I saw him again, and since he's been promoted, it's just weird. His cutter, which it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of upside with it. It was probably best case going to get to like an average pitch, but I thought it was a usable pitch. Has just really, it's turned into this like loopy, slow slider that isn't. I put a 40 on when I saw it, and I don't really love the shape it has, or I don't think its utility is very good either.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just been hit really hard in AAA. He's shown less velo. As I said, like when I've seen him a couple times, and the changeup is still very good, but the other pitches are just not showing the same crispness or consistency he did with them in AA. And I think between seeing that and then talking to scouts, yeah, it's been a little bit of I think kind of like an eye-opening experience or eye-opener seeing him against those, better AAA hitters and seeing the struggles he's had compared to what he was able to do when he was carving up AA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and then on the flip side, you have Perales, who obviously he's just gotten better and better as the season has gone on. His underlying stats have always been pretty good. He still needs to throw more strikes. That's kind of the biggest thing still, but he seems to have figured that out as of late. And yeah, with him,
really
it's
good.
just the stuff is just so much better. The raw stuff is just better than Drohan. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with Perales, the start I saw, he had a couple batters where he lost it a little bit, but he was able to recover really quick, like quicker than Wickham and Gonzalez did when I saw him at the same level last year, for example. So just the point in his development that he's a little further ahead on relative to where Wickham was last year. Gonzalez is at 9 this month, by the way, up from 12. I guess maybe just hit on some of the bigger risers, Ian. Chase Mydroth up from 23 to 14. Is interesting to me, and it's just like I think I'm gonna guess what you're gonna say is something to the effect of in that tier. There's a tier of guys probably from I'm looking at it. How would I tier them? Probably like at 13, 12, 11, maybe down to 25 ish, where you could probably put them in whatever order you want. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, around like 13,
30.
13.
Yeah.
No, not 30. No, let's not go crazy here. Like
Okay.
13 to like 24-ish.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is with Mydroth, I don't think he's ever going to get higher than this for me. Like he's someone, he's reached his ceiling for the rankings, and I like him, as we've talked about, but there's just not a lot of upside, and we're seeing